Our story begins in a small town on the banks of the Mississippi. In 1859, a German dry goods merchant, Theodore Kim, purchased 160 acres of land to establish a town for working people. He named the town after himself, combining Kim and the German word Wick, which means town or village. Kimswick prospered early on due to easy access to plentiful river transportation. The St. Louis Iron Mountain Southern Railroad thundered through Kimswick, bringing settlers, farmers, and tradesmen, booming the town to a community of 1,500 people. As the town grew, it flourished with the addition of an ironworks foundry, a grain mill, a brewery, and greenhouses that shipped fresh flowers to St. Louis. Many early settlers were stonemasons. They worked in the quarries around Kimswick cutting limestone, which was used to build the old St. Louis courthouse. This was the setting in 1905, when a new archdiocesan parish was established called St. Joseph's Catholic Church. Within a few years, our church community developed along with the Kimswick community, which now boasted a bank, a 3-story hotel, a lumber mill, a bootery, a blacksmith, and of course, a saloon. The spirit of this growth and expansion was mirrored at St. Joseph's, when in 1909 they built their first Catholic school to educate 13 enrolled families, and a legacy is created.
I've heard the stories of parishioners who would come and stoke the pot-bellied stove to keep the church warm. I remember Ray Harsey, who lived next door. He used to take care of the church and keep it warm. Melvin Ziegler talked about his dad coming to stoke the pot-bellied stove.
This bustling river town of Kimswick, with its active boat and train traffic, was soon left behind by modernization. The automobile became the main mode of transportation. Highways were built bypassing the town, and businesses relocated to be nearer to the new highways. Our nation roared into the gaiety of the 20s. Prohibition was repealed. The Goldenrod and other showboats came to town docking in Kimswick, bringing dancing and entertainment.
In 1921, a small band of men gathered in the parish basement at St. Joseph's at the request of our parish priest in order to form a council, number 2333 of the Knights of Columbus. The Knights of Columbus base everything they do on charity, fraternity, unity, and patriotism. It is a fraternal men's group, one of the largest fraternal men's group in the world, with 1.2 billion knights worldwide. Here at St. Joseph's, we have 195 members, and our goal and what we do with the Knights of Columbus is to be the right hand of our parish priest, doing exactly what he asks, doing what is good for our parish, and focusing mainly on charity and helping those in need within our parish.
The parish laid the foundation upon which history was made. In 1927, a new masonry church was built, and it marked a profound impact on the area.
When St. Joseph's were getting ready to build their little red brick church down in Kimswick, they were asking for volunteers to dig the foundation. So my mother-in-law decided she was going to do this. She would help. So she volunteered herself and her son, Morris, probably about 13 years old, to help. So they went down there with their team of horses, and they used this shovel type thing. It was a wide shovel type thing with 2 handles. They would just dig it into the ground, and the horses would just pull the soil out, dump it out, come back, starting all over again. I have no idea how long this lasted. I'm sure she wasn't the only volunteer, but I just thought it was incredible that this lady would do this. She was a great lady.
When they were building the new church down in Kimswick, the people of the parish done whatever they could to help out and defray expenses. One of them was the farmers in the area, are from the parish, would take their teams and wagons and go out to McClune's quarry on Wolf Hollow Road and load up spalls. Spalls were stones that were this big enough to fit down into the foundation forms when they were pouring the concrete for the foundation. My dad was one of those people that hauled the stones.
The story that I've always heard is that my grandfather went with the parish priest up to St. Louis to pick up the cornerstone for the new, at that time new, St. Joseph Church in 1927. And my father has been a lifelong member, 83 years in the parish, and went to school at St. Joseph, and I went to school at St. Joseph, and we're hoping, my husband and I are hoping that our sons too will get to go to St. Joseph also.
As the church grew and changed with the times, so did the parish school.
There were times when Father could not get nuns for the school down at St. Joseph's. So we had to go to Windsor School. And Windsor School would pick us up and take us to school. Then Father, in the middle of the year, sometime would get nuns, and then we would have to quit Windsor School, and we would walk again. And that same bus that picked us up to go to Windsor School just pass us up because they were not allowed to pick us up.
The country spiraled into a depression that brought hard times on everyone. People did the best they could to maintain the church and school and looked towards simpler pleasures and prayed that recovery was on the horizon.
One of the stories that Sonny used to tell me and my children about his school days were from Kimswick, that school was out when the strawberries were ready to be picked, and all the kids hoped that it would be early in May.
World War II left its mark on the town and on our parish. In the 1940s, people pitched in to make the best of whatever resources they had available.
The principal of St. Joseph's School, where I attended, Sister Mark, knew about my grandmother having a yard full of flowers, and so she politely asked me if I could bring some flowers to her to put on the altar. Well, grandmother raised everything from peonies, tulips, roses, and just about any kind of flower you could think of. And so I brought the flowers, but one time I brought some iris, and Sister looked at me and she said, after that, she said, don't bring any more iris because they drip on the altar cloth and stain it. So that wasn't one of the flowers I could bring anymore.
When I was 6 years old, I was at St. Joseph's School, and the nun had told us it was going to be picture day. So I did not have a comb. She comb your hair and freshen up your hair, and I did not have a comb. So I went to the pump, and I was going to put a little bit of water on it to freshen up my hair. So one of the Pfeiffer twins came by, and I had my head under the faucet, and he drenched me.
America of the 50s was primed for renovation. The hardships of the 40s dimmed in the brightness of the future. Families and housing in the area mushroomed at an extraordinary rate. Keeping in step with the country, our rural community updated and prepared for the future. The 50s also brought a new school building to the parish. The old wooden church was torn down to make room for the new school, so arrangements were made for classrooms during that time.
Well, down in Kimswick, on the other side of the railroad tracks, underneath that trestle, there was a boat club that used to be in business, and we all had a good time there, and we danced our lives away down there. But it shut down, and when St. Joseph's School needed a building for a year, they turned that over to St. Joseph's Parish. And my class and Sister Augustine's class, we moved down there, and what used to be the dance floor and all that became blackboards and desks and libraries. And the children and I and sisters, we went down there after church in the morning. The bus would take us down and pick us up in the evening. And that's where we held our class. And it was a pretty tough curriculum. It was just as tough as the St. Joseph's up in Kimswick was. We learned a lot down there, and yet we had time to really enjoy ourselves. We were able to sit underneath the trees and have reading lessons sometimes and watch the riverboats go by and just watch life go by down there, and it was a nice time for all of us.
As the world observed the race for space in the 60s, the first Catholic president was elected, and JFK set a youthful enthusiasm for the country. Pope John XXIII was named Man of the Year, and changes were happening in our Catholic Church worldwide. Vatican II brought the turning of the altar, and communion is now available to us under 2 species. The days of lining up at the communion rail are over. St. Joseph's glided into the 70s, and an era comes to an end. Change and modernization abound. Masses were no longer being said in Latin. guitar masses gain in popularity. Pope John Paul, the first non-Italian pope in 450 years, was elected our leader. Many subdivisions were built in Jefferson County, and new young families moved into the area and brought new ideas and ways of doing things. An energetic movement was underway to restore many of the buildings of Kimswick. With globalization, the world was becoming smaller, but camaraderie remained consistent.
It seemed like the entire parish would get together for the fall festival. We had tents and booths and beer and music and food galore. Much planning and hard work went into putting this on every year, and it would get bigger and bigger every year. We all look forward to working hard and having fun at these events. Sometimes it would get cold or rain unexpectedly, but it just never seemed to dampen our spirits. We just trudged ahead.
In the 70s, we were part of the group of people moving into Jefferson County to St. Joseph's Parish. We enjoyed the smallness of the area, the small church, and we watched in awe as the parish grew to what it is today.
St. Joseph's is very well known in Jefferson County for its many outreach programs. Sister Christine's Food Pantry has been a force in feeding the needy tens of thousands of meals every year for more than 25 consecutive years. New parish organizations, like St. Vincent de Paul, are active and working hard for people who have dire physical needs. Many other important caring organizations keep alive the spirit of this dynamic community in all the ways that are necessary for growth. The 80s brought additional diversity and expansion to St. Joseph's as deacons were appointed to serve the community.
We were very fortunate in this parish to have pastors who were receptive to deacons and accepted us. Many of our classmates and other fellow deacons didn't have that in their parishes. And we had great parishioners here. They welcomed us with open arms, and the fact is they even would play tricks on us. I remember my first homily when I gave that, and there was a group of them down in the first, second, and third row. And after I got out my homily, they held up placards rating my homily with 0 or 1 or even a -1 in one case. So it was great, and it's been fun. The whole since I've been ordained, it's been great.
Organized sports became an important part of St. Joe's.
In the 80s, the St. Joseph Athletic Association joined the South County CYC. We started with our baseball and our softball program, and then went into the soccer program. We didn't have our own fields at first, and so we had to practice anywhere we could find land, and all our games were away. Eventually, we leased land from the Wiles family for $1 a year, and which gave us some home advantage. As time went on, we started the volleyball program and the basketball program. We negotiated with Windsor School District for gym time, and they would also receive time on our fields. The reason for doing this was for the kids, to give them a Christian, good sportsmanship program.
St. Joseph's was growing. We were now 1,100 registered families strong. With a vision for the future, Father Andrew Sigmund spearheaded a parish expansion committee which led to the purchase of 15.5 acres of ground in October of 1993. Fundraising, planning, designing, earth moving, and building ensued. This was a real community effort. Father drafted many of the parish's skilled tradesmen, seniors, and students. Pretty much anyone willing to volunteer time and talent to make this endeavor a success. In 1998, Masses were held in our beautiful new church.
As we all know, Father Sigmund was always careful about, spending money or what he was doing with the money and everything. So one day he approached me and he says, the builder is asking us $800 to hang them 2 cables to suspend the crucifix above the altar. And I said, Father, don't let them do it, we do it ourselves. So he says, how do you think we're going to do that? He says, the ceiling is 45 feet from the floor. Well, I said, there's 3 high lifts there in the buildings. We're going to use one of them. So one day he talked to one of the workers, and the guy told him he was hiding the key at night. So one evening I decided to go up there to check things out, and I came back down. Says to Father, "You're coming up with me." Then he hesitated a little bit, look at the ceiling, look at the lift, and look at me, and climbed the basket, and up we went. So after we located the beams and all that, we anchored the cable and came back down. And as he was climbing out of the basket, he says, "Hey Ben," he says, don't ask me to go back up again."
Okay, in 1997, the church was nearing completion, and our students experienced church very differently. Father Sigmund would begin to take things over to the new church, and the first thing to go was the stained glass windows. And he tried to replace those with other stained glass windows, but they just weren't the same. When he took the crucifix, the candles, and the statues, I was like, oh my goodness, we can't be over here very long. And I talked Ben into putting a small 14 or 12-inch statue, and she just looked lost on that pedestal. So I began to pray that we wouldn't stay over here very long. The next thing that went was the Stations of the Cross. And with that, I walked over to the 8th grade classroom and I asked them, I said, "You got to help me with this. We need stations, especially for Lent." So during noon hours and whenever they had time, the 8th graders drew the stations and colored them and cut them out, and Ben put them up for us one day. So at least we had a small statue of Mary, the Stations of the Cross, a small crucifix and candle that Father had placed on the altar, because all of the other items were over in the new church. And so I began to storm heaven that we wouldn't stay over here. So I prayed, and God answered and heard our prayers. And on June 29th, 1999, our parents moved us over to the new school to be with the church, and we became St. Joseph Catholic Elementary School in Imperial, Missouri. So we were together with the church.
We survived the millennium, and growth continued. We became 1,400 registered families, with 263 students in the school and growing. Father Ed Golian joined our parish in July of 2002 and brought along his timely humor. By 2003, we are adding classrooms to our new school, expanding the seating in our church, and building a much anticipated rec center. 2005 gave us the smiling face of Father Brunel and his sidekick Reggie. For today's Centennial celebration, we are proudly numbering nearly 1,700 families in the parish, 400 students in the school, and 250 students in PSR. This parish has had major successes and setbacks, turmoil and triumphs, hardships and heroics. Through it all, the strongest thread in the fabric of St. Joseph's is our faith, and our people living their faith.
A lot has changed over 100 years of our parish history, but one thing has remained the same. There's the constant that we celebrate as we gather the people always, and that is the gift of Eucharist, gathering around Christ's body and blood, gathering around His Word and feeding on both of them. Much will change in the next 100 years, and maybe even the next year, but the constant is again that gift of the Eucharist. It's what brings us together and makes us a people under the patronage of the great saint and trusting Saint Joseph. So we ask God's blessing on this gathering, but we ask God's blessing on these years to come. God, you have blessed us so much under the patronage of Saint Joseph. Make this people gather together always in your name, a trusting group who feeds on your body and blood and becomes more your living image to the people of our area. May God bless us and strengthen us, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.